Welcome to Transqat. I'm Claire McCarthy. Albertus Magnus College in New Haven, Connecticut was founded in 1924 by the Dominican Sisters of Peace. Now, as a Latin teacher and as someone who watched way too many cartoons on Saturday mornings in the 70s, I have sometimes jokingly referred to the school as Fat Albert College. But that was back in the days before cartoons were available 24/7 and before America's dad was exposed as a monster. The school, named for the 13th century German friar, philosopher, scientist, bishop, and saint, is dedicated to the Latin term veritas, the search for truth in all its dimensions. Dominican tradition rests on 4 pillars: study, prayer, community, and service. You'll hear all 4 of these themes come up in today's episode, in which I chat with 2 members of Albertus Magnus's Pride Club. Hope you enjoy the conversation. Is it Albertus Pride? Albertus Magnus Pride? What do you like?
I think we just call it Pride Club, but for some reason we're trademarked with the Pride being in all caps. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, Pride Club at Albertus Magnus, welcome to Transqat. It's great to have you here tonight. I think we'll start just by going around the round table and everybody introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing here tonight.
I could go first. Hi, my name is Shannon Visco. I'm a sophomore at Albertus Magnus College right now. I'm from Connecticut, lived here my whole life. I've been in and out of Pride clubs, probably both in middle school and high school, because I'm a very busy person. I'm involved in a lot of things, so I show up when I can. But I was very happy to be a part of Pride Club here at Albertus. I joined my freshman year, and then the semester that I started college here, the former president transferred schools, and they saw that I was really interested in the Pride Club, and I showed up to like everything, and they were like, "Would you like to be president?" And I was like, "Sure, okay."
President as a sophomore.
That's an achievement.
Yeah. No, my first semester freshman president.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah. It was kind of scary initially because I had just gotten to the school. I didn't know anything about how clubs worked here, but I had great advisors, great vice president. So like we figured it out and it was great. And I'm really happy with where the club is right now, but very scary initially. But it's been a great learning experience.
Who else do we have? Let's go left around the table, which means nothing in a Zoom call.
Is that me?
That's you.
That's me? Okay. My name is Sanaya. I am from Hamden, Connecticut. I am a freshman here on campus. I am co-vice president, if I'm correct, of the Pride Club. I've been in and out of Pride as well. We didn't really have Pride clubs in my schools. They were like big on inclusion when it came to the LGBTQ. It was more of like, you're an athlete or like nothing at all. So when I came to Albertus, I didn't think they took Pride very seriously, but now that I've seen that they really do, I was like, oh, I like this. I like this a lot.
Are you doing athletics while you're at Albertus Magnus?
No, they don't have track and field.
Oh, all right. And Jeffrey, would you like to just introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Jeffrey Gangwish. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Visual Arts and Communication here at Albertus, and I am co-advisor to the Pride Club with Dr. Bonnie Pepper, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. Thank you very much for having us all.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. So Albertus Magnus is a Catholic school, and one of the things that it seemed as if this might be a great opportunity to talk about is that it gives you an opportunity to look at issues of pride surrounding queer things, queer people, queer lives, and show respect for your faith. So what has your experience of being in a Catholic school in a Pride Club been like? Maybe as you jump into answer, just remind us who we're listening to.
Yeah, hi, this is Shannon. It's been really amazing. I've been very like open of the fact that I'm like, oh, I'm in the Pride Club, like all this to like everyone that I talk to, and we have a lot of nuns who are both staff members and just around campus all the time. And it's just so heartwarming to have these people that are like super religious and Catholic and just very nice people come up to me and they're like, oh, I heard there's a Pride Club event this week. I'm going to try and stop by. Or what's the Pride Club doing? Or how's it going? It's just so heartwarming that like everyone is just so kind and accepting, and they like kind of intertwine it together. Like people who are religious leaders on campus are just so actively involved in like caring about Pride Club and want to do things for like Pride Month and everything. And they're just so welcoming and accepting and kind.
Okay, this is Sanaya. My experience, I haven't been here long enough to say anything because I'm a commuter. I don't live on campus. But from my past experiences, when it comes to like mixing religion with like pride-based things, I would say that Albertus is very humble when it comes to like accepting like others, as you would say. And like growing up, you were devoted to your religion or you were against it. There was no in between. And Albertus kind of like defeats that blurred line. They're just like, you're in what you're in, you're accepted here. At the end of the day, we're all one family and we're going to treat you as such.
Have either of you, has that been a struggle, balancing your faith and either your gender identity or your sexual identity?
I know personally, like just the LGBTQ plus community wasn't something that was talked about ever. I didn't know what it was until about middle school, and I grew up in like a Catholic family, so it was like almost like we just don't talk about it sort of a thing. So I haven't met very many people who like are like outwardly against it or anything, especially in terms of connection to faith, but it was just more like it's not something that's talked about or open about, because apparently I had like tons of family members of mine who are queer that I've known my entire life, but just it wasn't talked about that they were queer. So it was just something that was just like hidden. And that's like something I wish was different. I wish I knew about my family members and everything, but it wasn't like outward, like hatred or aggression or anything. It was just something that was quiet.
Yeah, I agree with that. With my family, they weren't against it, but they weren't for it until I came out. They were like, "Oh, we have a queer child. So now we have to like open our eyes more to it." So it was like my mom wasn't homophobic. It was more of my dad who was like, "Oh, you'll grow out of it. It's a phase." Then as he realized that it wasn't a phase, he was like, "Okay, I'll start to respect you and respect your community." Like before, it was like, "Oh, I'm never going to a pride parade," and now I'll be like, "Dad, there's a pride parade," and he'll be like, "Okay, I'm coming."
Oh, that's wonderful. Aww. Would you be willing to talk a little bit about your coming out?
Yeah, I was I didn't get the opportunity to come out. I was outed by a old friend of mine at my school, and it got the harassment that I was receiving at school. It wasn't really harassment, but it was like, the nasty things boys would say, like, "Oh, would you let like a guy come in," and stuff like that. Like it got to the point where like teachers got concerned. So it got to my parents, and then they had to sit down, and I told them that I did in fact have an attraction to women. My mom shrugged it off and she's like, "Okay, that's fine." My mom didn't really care. It was more of my dad. He was just like, "Oh, I'll accept it for now, but you'll grow out of it." Months went by, I didn't grow out of it, years went by, and now he just accepts it and just like goes along with it. He doesn't really have a problem with it. He even jokes about it. He's just like, "Oh, are you gonna bring a girlfriend home soon?" And stuff. So
that first Thanksgiving dinner with you and your girlfriend are on the table. That'll be the real test.
Well, that's exactly how it went. But it wasn't Thanksgiving, it was 4th of July.
And did it go well? Did you?
Yeah, they all welcomed her in. My family, again, like Shannon, I didn't know I had a lot of queer family members until I came out. They were like, "Oh yeah, we were all queer at one point. Like your uncle's queer." And I was like, "He is?" Like I didn't like know. Like I wish I knew before so I didn't feel as bad as I did when I was being outed. So like again, it was like our family didn't like care, but they didn't like dismiss it.
What a loss not to be able to draw on that as a role model, a mentor, somebody that you could go to ask questions as you're questioning yourself.
Yeah, me and him are closer than ever now, though.
Excellent. Shannon, you said you have family members who are queer.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do to support them? What kind of relationship do you have with them? I assume they're all aware of the work you're doing here at school with the Pride Club.
It's interesting actually, because most of from what I've heard from my parents is that most of my like queer relatives are a little like farther distance or people that I haven't met, but my great uncle, who is my grandmother's younger brother, he lives in Ireland. So I don't see him that often, but like as a kid, it was always like, oh, your uncle and his travel partner are coming to visit.
If you couldn't hear it in the tone, there were air quotes involved in that last comment.
Yeah, so it was always like, oh, you're his uncle and his best friend or his
Yeah,
travel
that's how it was for me too. It
Yeah.
was like, oh, yeah, your uncle and his long best friend. And I'm sitting here like, that's a very long best friend that comes to every family event.
But like, I didn't know they were together until like high school, maybe my sophomore, junior year. And I was like, wait, like mine just absolutely blown. And I wish I had known sooner so I could have like talked to them about it. But like they still visit occasionally and it's like great seeing them and everything. But it's just I wish they lived closer, and also like I wish I had known sooner.
Let me ask you about labels, because I'm an old person, and as an old person, labels meant a lot, and I very much found comfort in the label once I realized, okay, this is who I am. I get the feeling that maybe labels aren't quite as important to the younger generation of queer folks and queer allies. Can you guys each talk about that a little bit? What do labels mean to you?
I really like this question. I like how you brought this up because I think it really depends on the person. I know people who like absolutely like hate to label themselves and don't want to be like thrown in that box. But then there's like other people, like I know personally, like I like the labels. Like I like being able to be like, oh, me and this other person like both identify as the same thing. And so then we can like connect immediately on it. And I also just have like a math oriented brain. I like there's like this, and this, and then you can go as this and this and this. But then I also get that like some people don't like that. And it's just like, yeah, do whatever you want. Like life is just crazy. There's stuff going on. There's no fixed anything. Like just do whatever makes you happy. So I personally like labels, but not everyone does, and that's okay.
I like that analogy to math, because things have to be labeled in in an equation, and it just makes everything clearer. But for some people, that's oppressive.
I don't like labels because in my brain, it's like the spectrum is constantly changing as we grow up and evolve into more like people are going to change how they identify. So growing up, especially when I first came out, I was like, okay, I have to label as this, I have to label as that. But then like as I grew, I was like, I don't need a label to identify my personal preference, my sexuality, how I prefer to look. If I am what I am, I love what I love, and I don't think I need to label myself because I'm constantly changing. So it might not stay that way forever.
There's a sense of your identity evolving, and that a label would just kind of hold you back from that.
Yeah.
And that seems to me perfectly natural, because everybody is in transition at some point in their lives. I mean, they're all transitioning from single person to married person, or from, to becoming a parent, or menopause, or, whatever. That we're all in transition, and to deny yourself the right to change seems like it would be choking.
Yeah, I've seen that firsthand. People are like, oh, I've identified as this for so long, and now having to change is gonna be like, I have to correct everyone now. I have to tell everyone now. And I had to come out again. Like I just say, I'm a queer person. I like what I like, and I go about my day. I don't make it like a big label thing.
Right. Now that, I think in some ways that sets you up well for the world after college. And I know as I'm talking to a freshman and a sophomore, that seems like forever down the road. But let me go there. What expectations do you have of the working world, the world outside of the bubble of school, in terms of gender identity, sexual identity?
I'm honestly like very optimistic. for the future, because even just the little changes that like I see on campus, like every day I feel like I see a new person like put their pronouns and like their email signature, just like ask about pronouns when they meet you and everything. Like I feel like people are just becoming more and more accepting, and just the more information that's out there and the more like people like are coming out, or the more like widespread like the LGBTQ plus community is in media and everything, like people are just realizing that like, hey, we exist and it's normal and it's part of life now. So I know there's always going to be people out there that are like homophobic and everything, but I feel like for the most part like people are just becoming more accepting and everything. So I know I'm not like personally worried about like anything in the workplace. Like I'm honestly just excited to meet different types of people and everything. So personally, I feel optimistic.
I like to believe I'm optimistic about it because again, like Shannon said, I see a lot of changes in the positive way. But the community that I've grown up in, I can't help but be more realistic that there are more negatives in the world than positives when it comes to gender identity, like accepting it. Because at the end of the day, people are going to see what they want to see, no matter how much you try to educate them, teach them, they're still going to be very bigoted. I've seen that firsthand in my workplace. I've definitely seen it on campus with one of my classmates where like they'll like mock their pronouns. So as optimistic as I would like to be, I'm also really realistic when it comes to the type of things that I see.
Right. You were describing earlier that you've been on the receiving end of harassment. Then it shows how much further we still have to go.
Yeah, like I don't want people to think just because it looks good right now, that doesn't mean that there's still not more to fight for.
Right.
Exactly.
Let me take it back to Catholicism, because I was raised Catholic, and in fact, the year after I graduated from my undergrad degree, I joined the Paulist Fathers Novitiate. Didn't last very long, but a career in ministry was something I was thinking about, at least. I let go of that faith over the Catholic Church's treatment of queer people. I took them at their word that there was no place for people like me there. So I'd like to get more in depth with you guys about how that is reconciled, both at your school and in your own personal struggles.
I have the perfect story for that. Okay, so I grew up in a very, I wouldn't say we were Christian, but like my grandmother was very like crosses everywhere, pictures of the Pope, like very standard Hispanic grandmother.
Right. Okay.
Very, like she was just like, oh, we're going to church every Sunday. We didn't do like the Wednesday Bible study things, but like every Sunday you were up at 9 a.m. getting ready. Like there was no question. Every holiday we were there, New Year's, Palm Sunday, we were always there. And it was around the time when I started questioning my sexuality, when I really like saw the flaws and hypocrisy when it came to churches. Or it's like we would talk about not judging each other, always like being a safe haven for each other. But then they would spend hours just gossiping about everyone in the church, saying how they were flawed in these ways, this, that, and the third. I remember this one lady, she for some reason just hated me and my brother. And she would just like say like, oh, your mom's doing a bad job and stuff like that with you guys. She needs to work better on this. She shouldn't let you do this. You have too much freedom. Yeah. And I just saw like the hypocrisy in it. And it just made me like drive back from the church, because I thought it was just my church that I grew up in. But then I went to others and I was just like, they're all the same. Like they're very hypocritical. And it made me almost hate Christianity to a point where like I just like hated it, because I felt like they were all the same, especially because I was figuring out my sexuality. And I remember this one time I went to church. It was the time when I first came out and my parents figured out. And the priest did a whole thing about how homosexuality was a sin, how it wasn't acceptable, and how like God was going to punish them all. And I have not been since.
Wow.
So personally, I steer clear of religion when it comes to my sexuality because of that moment. It's like ingrained in my head. Like the thought of going to church is very traumatizing now. Yeah. And my parents don't seem to understand that at some, like there's, oh, it wasn't towards you. And I was like, it was kind of weird how the moment I came out, all of a sudden homosexuality was a problem. in our church.
Well, that's
We
what
had
I was
never
going to
come
ask.
up
Do
before.
you feel, I mean, obviously neither one of us should be speaking for that priest, but do you feel like that was a direct
I
response?
think it was because I know that my church and my grandmother, they all grew up together. So I know they gossiped a lot. And I know my mom told my grandmother everything. And it was the only time that they ever brought up homosexuality. Out of the 12 years that I went there, they never brought it up.
Mm.
So I felt very targeted. And when I tried to bring it up to my mom, she was like, oh, you're just overreacting. And I was just like, no, it doesn't. It feels very targeted. So when it comes to religion and my sexuality, I like to keep them apart. I believe in what I believe in, but the God everyone else worship is not my God.
So you feel a sense of spirituality there,
Yeah,
to
I'm
use
more
your
of a
words, yeah.
yeah, I'm more of a spiritual person than a godly person
Okay.
because of how it affected me growing up.
Is
That
that
answer
a
question?
concern on a Catholic campus? Is that
Yeah, it really was. When because at first I didn't know Albertus was a Catholic school until I actually moved in, and they're like, "Oh yeah, there's a church on campus," and I was like, "Oh, that's a problem." But
right?
then like I joined Pride. They told me that there was a Pride club on campus, and then Shannon was telling me how like they're really accepting. Like you'll never have to deal with something like I did. And then like when I saw it firsthand, like we had a cookie event, and like one of the sisters came up and like decorated a cookie, and I was like, "Oh my god."
That she would be there, and
Yeah, I was like, oh
just
my God, this is so like I've never seen that in like my community because Afro Latina communities, when it comes to homosexuality, they're very bigoted and they don't know that they are.
Hmm.
So they'll be like, oh no, that's just Jose being Jose. And they'll be like, no, you need to accept Jose for who he is.
Right. That and it's not enough to love and support somebody in
Yeah.
spite of who they are. You
Hmm.
need to love and support them for who they are.
Exactly.
Shannon, you were talking earlier as well about faculty support. How do you think those faculty members who are showing up for cookie events and for pride parades, how do you think they're reconciling that conflict between what the Catholic Church as an institution says and their ability to be loving, accepting people?
I've definitely had lots of conversations with some of the sisters, particularly about how sometimes like people take like kind of like the Catholic tradition as a whole and kind of use it in ways that's like not intended, such as to like spread hate and everything. And they always say like the most important like rule about Christianity and Catholicism and everything is just to love people. So I feel like it's very like modern here in terms of Catholicism. Like there's no like strict abiding to like rules and things that are set in place and everything. Like they just love you no matter what, and they love you like because of the way that you are. That's why there's so much support on campus for like the Pride Club and our Black Student Union and Multicultural Club and everything. Like they show up for everything and support it. There's an Instagram for the Dominican ministries, and they're always like putting on their stories of like different events that like the Pride Club and BSU are putting on and everything. Like there's just so much support and love, and I think that's because they kind of like have that understanding of religion and everything. Like you just need to love thy neighbor, essentially. Like that's what it's all about.
That's the feeling I get from this school. Like this is what they like in the orientation, they're like, this is a home. Yeah, this is literally like a home. Like you could feel homesick, but at the end of the day, you know that there's someone to turn to, a school, like a classmate, a teacher, anyone you could just turn to, like, hey, I'm not feeling well. And they'll be like, oh, let's talk about it. Like I'm like people that I don't even know walk up to me like, hey, like how you doing? I'm just like, I don't know, I don't remember your name, but hi.
Yeah.
Thanks for checking in. That's something I don't know. I mean, both of you guys are early in your career at the school, but I wonder how much of that comes about through the COVID experience, that the notion of checking in on one another. And
No student, her name is Michaela. She's a senior, I believe. She said that Michaela, yeah, she does. She said that even through COVID, they still did a lot of check-ins and stuff like emails. Like they would email like, hey, are you guys okay? She told me that they did a lot of those things. They did like when COVID started to like slow down and people slowly came back into classes. She said that they had like small little like picnic events where you could come and pick up some food or something and stuff. Like they were very I would say not inclusive, but like they're very open with getting back in reach with everyone and being like, okay, guys, this is still a home. You could still come back. just be safe about it.
Right. But that sense of community, and we will rally as a community for all of us. That's invaluable. Do you find queer issues brought into the curriculum at all?
In my English class, yes. My professor, her name's Sarah Woman. She brings a lot of issues, like not just queer issues. She'll bring in like minority issues into like our work, and she'll be like, okay, this is an issue that we need to talk about. And like she'll make us like give our point of view and stuff. Sometimes it does bring a debate in class because you have the kids that don't really understand it from a minority's point of view, and you have to like educate them on it. I've done that many times. It's caused many debates in our classes. But I know Fertini, Deborah Fertina, she also brings in a lot of minority issues and like POC issues, queer issues. She'll be like, oh, I know that there's last semester we had a lesson on like how we're all made from the same thing and that there's no such thing as gender, science has proved it and stuff. And I'm just like, this is very nice. Like for the first week of school, I was like, this is very nice. I love this.
Rotini's awesome. I love
He
her.
is awesome.
Hang on a sec. My cat Newt has decided to join us.
Oh, Newt.
So, you want to say hi, buddy? Oh my God, you're large.
Oh my God, it's an orange cat.
This is Newt.
My cat is gray, but
Newt is the CEO of Transqat Enterprises, so he likes to check in and make sure I'm doing a good job.
As he should.
Hi, it's Claire. Sorry to interrupt, but at this point in the conversation, I tried to make a reference to a podcast called Queery, Queery. It's hosted by comedian Cameron Esposito, but in the moment, I couldn't remember her name. She has a podcast where she ends by asking her, and we're not ending yet, but asking her guests about who their queeros are, who their gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender heroes, people who motivated them, people who showed them that something could be done that maybe they didn't think could be done.
I feel like I could talk all day about that.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
I think my first ever, like, I guess, celebrity that I was really, like, interested in that, like, I realized was queer was Mitch Grossi from Pentatonics.
Ooh.
Yeah, I've loved Pentatonics since I was little, and then, like, as I got into, like, middle school and older, I realized that, like, oh, like Mitch came out as gay, like Mitch is gender fluid, and I know like really in terms of my like gender identity, I really like connected to him because he was wearing like all sorts of different fashion from like all sorts of like traditional like, you know, way clothing is gendered and everything. Like he was wearing stuff like all over the place, and I was like, I can dress like that too. Like I can identify however I want, and it's okay to do that, and people are going to be accepting of me and everything. And it was just, that was like one of the first like celebrities that I really connected to and like learned about that, and I felt like safe in my identity because I saw that this person did it, and so I can do it too.
I forgot how to pronounce her name, but she's an African-American singer, Janelle Monáe.
Oh my goodness, I'm in love with
Yeah,
Janelle
my mom
Monáe.
loves her, and I never knew she was queer until I came out. Mom was like, I found some queer people you would like. And she would like, she just like put on shows and be like, yeah, she's gay. She's gay. Yeah, she's gay just like you. And I just fell in love with her because it was like, no, even though she was gay, she was still very powerful and open. And I was just like, I want to be like that. I want to be, just because I am a bisexual woman doesn't mean that I have to quiet down my voice or like not speak up or like speak my truth, or just because I'm a Black queer woman, I have like 3 things going against me now. I'm a woman, I'm a person of color, and I'm queer. So just because I'm all of those things, I can still be as successful as her. So that's how I connected with her. I was like, she's amazing. She's a boss. I want to be just like her.
Anybody else?
I would say Willow Smith, because I love how she expressed herself. Not the things she does, but the way she expresses herself. And her and her mother's relationship was kind of like me and my mom's. So it was like the way that she was able to be open about her sexuality and how she identifies herself, and how she, again, she doesn't do labels. She just is what she is. And I like really liked that, but then she became very controversial, and I was like, oh.
Yeah. I'm sure you're aware that even though you are in this place where you are being affirmed and cared for, we are in a climate right now where there's a lot of pushback, not just angry rhetoric, but legislative agendas to deny queer people their rights. And I'm wondering how that affects you, because I guess, they say fight, flight, freeze are the human options, right? So does it intimidate you? Does it motivate you to do something? How does that affect you?
I feel more of like, well, let me just say now, my brother is trans and he recently started hormones, testosterone. And because of these bills that they're trying to pass, like kids under the age of 18 can't get them. And even if you are 18, it's going to be harder for you to get them without insurance. I know that it causes a lot of anxiety for me because it's like my brother just now started to accept himself for what he is and like stopped, like he's finally finding his person, who he is, getting comfortable in his skin. He started the hormones and then all of a sudden it got taken away from him. And it's like, I saw firsthand how it affected him. And I was like, I would never want anyone to go through that. So I feel like the fight, freeze, flight thing. I'm a fighter when it comes to this type of things. I will fight for it because he got them back after we were able to prove that he was insured by the government, or whatever it is. He's insured to have them, but like people who can't do that, what are they going to do?
So that this motivates you to stand up to that rather
Yeah,
than...
'cause I knew that there were problems, but I didn't think it was like, oh yeah, we're going to cut off your medicine because we said so.
I mean, we happen to be in a state that's at this point pretty protective of those rights, but that's not a guarantee. And that's 1 out of 50.
Mm-hmm.
Shannon, you're a math person. What's the fraction for that?
1/50.
Okay, great. Yep. Tell me about you, because you said you've been involved in pride groups, middle school, high school, and now university level. What is that? How does that impact you?
I definitely feel like a lot of that fear, because it's like, oh, if like it can just be taken away that easily, like what's it gonna look like in the future? But I think like after I get over that initial like fear, I get angry, like because it's like these are like basic human rights to be who you are, love who you want to love, dress how you want to dress, like that should just be something that everyone has. So it definitely like motivates me to like, do all the things, sign petitions, go to protests, like email and write letters and everything. Like we have to make a change, because if we just sit here in fear and just let it happen, it's just going to happen. So like we have to make our voices heard and let them know that like this younger generation isn't going to let that slide. And I know that there's a lot of people who aren't even in like the LGBTQ plus community who also like feel the same thing and like just fight for us. And it's really just a nice feeling to know that there's people like who don't even like identify in the community who like care about us and care about everyone, and just like, like I said earlier, like just the basic human right to be who you are. And just I'm like I said earlier, like I'm optimistic. I know that like have to be realistic sometimes about like sometimes the dangers and things that can happen, but I'm optimistic of the trend that our generation is going.
Let me push that one question further, because we've been talking about the support you've received from faculty members, from adults who can check in with you, make sure you're okay. One of the talking points is that people who would do that are looking to groom children. They are looking to convert them, recruit them. And this is, I see an angry face staring back at me.
That's exactly how my dad reacted when I came out. Well, he wasn't like people, he was like, the media's grooming you to think that way and stuff like that. And I was just like, no, I didn't really have access to the internet when I was younger. So no, no. I fell in love with my best friend in middle school. That's what happened, Father. I didn't get influenced by the online world.
It happens to everyone.
It happens to everyone. Do you realize that? Maybe she is a little bit more prettier than just holding hands. But yeah, I hate that argument because it's like if that's your first thought, or like when they're like, oh, you can't show kids this at the young age because it teaches them about sex. Queer marriage is not just sex. There's love involved. There's compassion involved. There's compromise. There's a reason why there's many studies that say queer parents are better parents than heterosexual parents, because you guys like to, again, the label. You guys put a very discriminatory and disgusting label on queer people when it comes to them raising kids, taking care of kids, teaching kids. You're just like, oh, they're going to teach them something so bad. Why is that your first thought when you think of a queer person? What about the actual groomers that are straight and do the same thing? What about the actual people that you guys protect in your families that are actually the wrong, like especially in African American families? They will protect the pedophile in the family rather than protecting the queer son in the family. I've seen that firsthand, and it disgusts me, especially when my dad brings up the argument that I was groomed into thinking in a queer way. So like that discussion is very, very triggering for me.
It sounds it, yeah. But to have that be the first response that, okay, somebody did this to you.
I don't think they know what the word groomed means. Like really they just throw it around. Like
they learned the word and didn't know how to unlearn
it. Because that's not what it means. Like they're just throwing it around in like the place of like slurs and hateful language because they want to like act like they're trying to protect kids and protect people when in reality they just want to spread hate.
They want to control everything. And it's like, especially when they're like, oh, trans women can't be in the women's bathroom because they're going to try to like attack women. Who said that? Who is going to go? First of all, my first thought is, who is going to go through loads of procedures, all the transitioning medicine, all the hormones that like make them feel very insecure about themselves, the depression, the mental fights that they have with the body dysmorphia. Why would I go through all that to harass another woman when I want to be like that woman? Like, I don't understand how that argument came to be.
I'm clapping.
It's
Thank
just
you.
An excuse.
I myself like to go into the bathroom and pee.
It's like you go there, you do your business, you wash your hands, and you leave.
Yeah.
No one likes being in a public bathroom.
Oh my God, no!
I don't pee in front of other people.
In a public bathroom. If I can hold it until I get home, I'm holding it until I get home. Or if there's like the single stall bathrooms, because they're for some reason much cleaner.
Those are great.
Yeah, I'll go in one of those. But if it's like a multi-stall bath, I'm not going in it.
We have so many like gender neutral bathrooms on campus.
And yes, I always go in those ones.
Every building that you're in, there's like several gender neutral bathrooms. They're just the single stall.
Single
and
use. Yep.
Oh. This is what it should be. I don't want to pee with other people.
Yeah.
That too.
I think that's something that unites us all. Gay, straight, cis, trans. I think we all want to pee in a private place.
Yep.
So it sounds as if you guys are well prepared, distinguish between reasonable arguments and just nonsense, where you can say, okay, that's just
you spreading something.
Yeah. As opposed to somebody who has legitimate questions and comes to you respectfully and says, okay, can we talk about...
Like if someone respectfully doesn't come in an angry manner, like you can tell by someone's tone that they're being like rude, or if they're just like, oh, I'm curious. Like if they're like, oh, I was wondering, like, do you worry about these things? But then like, oh, aren't you worried that they're gonna abuse this and abuse that? Like, no, I'm not. Like again, especially with trans men that go to the guy's bathroom, you know how much fear they have going into a male bathroom, knowing that they're more likely to be attacked by a cis man than a cis woman is by a trans woman. There's such a power dynamic that no one considers when they speak on these things. It's like, oh, I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the trans men that are being harassed in the men's bathroom because cis men's masculinity is threatened.
Very good point. Yep.
I've had these arguments so many times with my dad. It's so funny.
and people get so worked up about trans women athletes, but not trans men athletes, you know?
It's the only time they ever seem to care about women's athletics, because that's pushed to the side in favor of like men's athletics.
It's not a fair fight.
They get more money, like they just are cared about more, but then as soon as like a trans woman wants to be on a women's sports team, then they start like with all the regulations, and it's like it's not fair or whatever. And it's like, I don't even think there should be separate like teams for men and women. Like just that's
sports
a
are sports.
whole other
Why does
issue,
it matter?
Yeah.
I have this analogy that I use with my dad when he used to be very bigoted. I was like, because I have a little sister, and I'll be like, okay, so you know how the baby comes up to you with a plate with fake food on it and you pretend to eat it. You know there's no food up there, but you know that it makes her happy. So imagine that's a trans person. It doesn't matter if you don't believe that they are a trans woman or trans man. It's their mental health and their happiness. You need to respect that the same way that you respect a toddler coming up to you with a fake plate of food.
Shannon, do you see yourself continuing to be active in advocacy, activism once you're out of school?
I don't think I could stop if I wanted to. I feel like, again, I'm a very like loud, opinionated person, and like I feel like I'm always gonna be fighting or like giving out information and always just like standing up for what I believe in, because like I can't wait for someone else to come along and do it for me. So I'm gonna do it myself and do what I can as a single person to like help other people and help myself.
I really admire what brought us here tonight, the idea of trying to reconcile faith and queerness, because I've talked to a couple of people doing this podcast who have done exactly that. When they realized, okay, this is me and this conflicts with what my religion says, they sat down and did their homework. They sat down and they studied and they worked at it and they found a way to reconcile, and it might mean, as we were hearing earlier, it might mean, okay, I'm not going into the church for services, but that doesn't mean I stop believing, and it doesn't mean that I have to feel like I've been rejected. I'm going to work out my own relationship here. I'm just going to be candid. I wish I had been smart enough to do that. I wish I hadn't taken them at face value. So good on both of you.
I think it's just like you learn as you go, like no one's ever going to have like all the right answers or right decisions for everything. Like making mistakes is just how life works, and especially like LGBTQ plus community, like you're going to do the wrong thing, say the wrong thing. If you choose to use labels, you're going to label with the wrong thing. Like it's just, you figure it out.
And if we can all do that sort of supportive community where you've got respect for other people, then it becomes a given that people are trying to be supportive. And you can just kind of rest on that, so that when they make a mistake, when they use the wrong pronoun, when they dead name you, that they're receptive to a correction, that you can just sort of trust that people are not out to hurt you.
I'm really proud of my mom in that regard, because one of my best friends since I was little, he's a trans man. So my mom has had like bit of a time like figuring that out, because it's like, oh, you knew this person as someone completely different their entire lives, and now like using a different name, he him pronouns and everything. And my mom has been really good about that, like, oh, what does dead naming mean, like why is that a problem, like what do pronouns mean and everything. And then just everything that comes along with it. I have like several friends who use like, or a non-binary and use they them pronouns, and my mom's always like, what does that mean? Can you explain that to me? And so I'm very proud of her, particularly in the fact that she like not only like feels comfortable asking me, but the fact like she does it in a respectful manner, and she's like, I don't want to say something wrong, and I want like to know why, even if she doesn't like particularly like believe it or understand it fully, like she tries to understand it.
Hi, sorry to interrupt. I have to leave. My other event is starting.
Oh, okay.
I enjoyed being here, and I would love to come back.
Oh, it was wonderful talking to you. Yeah, I think we should do this again.
Yes, I think we should. I enjoyed this.
Absolutely. Bye, Sanaya.
Bye, Shannon.
Well, Shannon, let me end. This seems like a perfect place to wrap up. If people who are considering coming to your school, you've got a senior in high school who's looking around, why should they come to Albertus Magnus? What does in particular, I mean the school in general, but in particular the Pride Club, what does it have to offer them?
I know personally, like when I was looking at schools, like I wanted a school that was good for my major. I'm a psychology major, but also like I wanted like that small campus where it was like a small community, but like a tight community. Like you could walk around and know pretty much everyone that you like come across with. And that's also just like makes it easy to form bonds with like staff members and faculty members and just make friends easily. But not only that, like since everyone like knows each other, like there's like that aura of like kindness and love and respect for everyone else and just acceptance. Like doesn't matter who you are or what you look like or anything, like people are gonna be kind to you and they're going to respect you. Like there's so many like we have like there's so many events that like hand out like pins like what ask me for my pronouns and just all of these little things that everyone on campus does to make you feel like welcome no matter who you are. And especially with like the Pride Club as big as it is now, like we're one of the biggest clubs on campus currently. I think we're like top 3.
Oh, wow.
Mistake if I'm correct. Top 3 or 4. So it's just amazing to see like how much we've grown and just how big of a presence we have on campus. Whenever like someone asks like what clubs are on campus, we're one of the first ones that people think of. And it's just amazing to know how much of like an impact that we have in our community and just how willing people are to accept us and talk about us.
Thank you so much for doing this and for doing all this work to arrange it.
Thank you so much. Like if you asked me like in high school that I was going to be on like a podcast in college, I wouldn't have believed you. Like this is such an amazing opportunity. And I want to thank you so much for having us on here. Like this is incredible.
Hope, like gender, is not a binary. The choices are more than just optimism and pessimism. Sanaya and Shannon point to an informed pragmatism. They know that this world can be cold and harsh, but that Dominican sisters' influence, the desire to affirm, and here I'm quoting from the Albertus Magnus website, the essential dignity of each person as a being of divine origin, end quote, allows them to approach that hard and dirty world with a clear eye on reason. They are on the path to veritas, the truth. And that gives me hope. The author and children's advocate Andrew Vax tells a parable about a teacher and a student. The teacher asks, "What's the difference between an alligator and an elephant?" The student fumbles around, tries to reach the answer, but he can't get there. So the teacher explains, the baby alligator comes out of the egg a perfectly formed predator. It will not grow. It will only get larger. Do you see? It learns nothing. From the moment of its birth, it fights to survive. And if it succeeds, if it reaches full size, it hunts. At birth, it is 6 inches long. In adulthood, perhaps 6 feet. The difference can be measured. As a predator, it increases in power, in skill. But no matter what its fate, it will always be what it was born to be. The student says, I understand. The teacher says, do you? Your work is with children. To work with children, you must know the child. The baby elephant cannot survive on its own. It needs nurturing. It needs protection. Without love, it dies. Depending on how it is raised, the baby elephant grows to be a work animal, a circus performer, a peaceful beast, content to live in harmony with the herd, its family. But some elephants grow up to be rogues, dangerous to man, depending on how they are raised. That is the key. Do you see the difference now? Yes. And so ask yourself, are the children of men alligators, doomed to be what they will be from the moment of their birth? Or are they elephants, fated to be nothing specific and capable of anything?
This is Sadie McCarthy. I'm Claire's niece. Transqat is a production of Transqat Enterprises, LLC. Copyright 2022, all rights reserved. Join us on the web at transqat.com. That's TRANSQAT.com. transqat.com. There, you'll find links to Transqat, the blog, writing projects, speaking engagements, and more. You can also meet the team who thought spelling cat with a Q was a good idea. Follow Transqat on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Leave us a comment on whatever platform you use to stream this podcast. Just remember to be kind. She has enough self-esteem problems already. To reach Claire with a question or a suggestion for an upcoming episode, just use the contact page at the website or email her directly at crmtranscat@gmail.com. Thanks for listening!